Told you we always been ready. I don't need people that's petty, that weigh on me heavy while I'm being steady. I need a record with Felly. We get it bouncing like Betty's, I feel like I'm Nelly. Don't bring the beef like a deli, it's leaving I levy. No sleeping on me like I'm Freddy. Chris Breeze, how I do, hit him with the moves. Left hand step back, ballin' like I'm Coos. All faith, God's plan, you just gotta choose. God slaps, nothing left to prove. Y'all gotta leave me alone. Lately I've been in my zone. Told them no cap like I fitted, but lately the flows have been straight off the dome. I feel like I'm MVP, like my name Patty Mahomes. If it ain't about money, don't hit on my phone, cause lately I've been in my zone.
Hello, welcome to the Cowboy Show, hosted by Ben Cary and Nick Gronerad, combining expert human opinions with cutting-edge simulation models to help you arrive at the best picks each week. Inside Edge Community. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to our first college football Saturday week 1 show. I'm pumped. Adam and I were just talking about it off air. College football, it's officially here with the Saturday. And joining me, Adam Trigger. How we doing, man?
I'm doing great. You're right. It's officially here because we do this week 0 thing where there's just a bunch of no-name teams play each other. I was talking to my friend Kelly Stewart, Kelly in Vegas last week, and we have our own show. We kind of joke about week 0. Like, it would be so much better if you're going to have 7 games. Make it Colorado, TCU, North Carolina, South Carolina, Boise State, Washington. Put those 7 games on week 0. So then because last week, we had a weekend of a Saturday of college football, but this really truly feels like the first Saturday of college football. So glad it's back.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the week 0 games over the years have kind of been declining. Like, you would get like one somewhat decent game, but this year it's like
didn't they used to throw Colorado State, Colorado in week 0 sometimes? Like, there was a couple. I think Oregon State would have like a half decent game every once in a while.
Yeah, they used to do that. I'm under the opinion that some of these teams, like, they don't want to play in week 0, but I don't know. I don't know what the case is, but hopefully next year we'll get a little bit of a better slate, because when Notre Dame Navy's like the premier game, it's kind of like whatever. But it is what it is. Before we hop on into today's games, yesterday, kind of the same thing for me. It was just Miami, Ohio. They didn't look good. Miami, Florida looked decent. I can't tell if it was more Miami, Ohio sucked or Miami, Florida was good. But what were your thoughts on that one? Because I know you were on it.
Yeah, I had Miami of Ohio. Bet it weeks ago. I personally had 18. Gave it out at 17.5. So of course, when it's going off 15.5, 16, I'm feeling okay. But didn't matter. I didn't think Miami of Ohio was probably as bad as the final score looked. Miami's defense was better than I thought it was going to be. Miami, Ohio's offense was not very good, but Miami, they hung in there defensively. I thought there was a stretch where, all right, I'm like doing the math. I'm like, maybe we'll get 27-10 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to not be the case, but we'll be interested to see those teams when they play, more of a like opponent. I think some of it was tough to tell based on the fact that Miami, Ohio is clearly stepping up in class to Miami and maybe vice versa. So maybe we'll find out more from those two teams in the coming weeks when they play a more even opponent.
Yeah, there are a few plays where the speed and talent disparity was like on full display, like a few runs by Miami. I'm like, yeah, this is a MAC team versus a Power 5 school. But with the spread of 17, you kind of expected that. But yeah, Miami, Ohio didn't really put up a decent fight there.
Well, the thing with Miami at the Hurricanes, I kind of talked about preseason was they really lacked organization last year. Like, it was kind of like a mess. Their whole just thing was a mess on both sides of the ball. And they have some very good players. So if suddenly they come back and they're like super organized this year and the defense is engaged and whatnot, they could be pretty good. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm I have my buddies texting me 5 minutes of the game. Miami's back. I don't know about that yet. We'll see. But It could be. I mean, they've got the talent to do it. So be an interesting team to watch over the coming weeks. And
Yeah.
next week. They got a big game next week. So we'll see.
Yeah, the ACC, I mean, it's somewhat open. I mean, you have Clemson, Florida State, like the hype is there with them, but like Miami's kind of like a team that maybe it's good for them that they've been slept on a little bit, and maybe that's what they needed to kind of get back on the landscape of things. So yeah, but here we are today. We have a loaded slate. We're gonna, I think, run through 6 games, and Adam's gonna help us break them down. I know a lot of these you've discussed on Wager Talk already, some you haven't. But yeah, I'm excited to have a discussion with you and kind of break down. And the fun thing with these is sometimes, like, the guests I'll have on, like, they will share a point and I'll fire something up on the spot. So chat, make sure to chime in. Let us know what you guys are thinking as we run through these games. And before we hop on into the first game, I want to give a shout out to Unabated Sports. We got the odd screen right in front of us. It's lighting up as we speak. Always fun on Saturday to see like some of these late moves. I was listening to Brad Powers on another show, and it might have been maybe Joey who said this, Joey Knish, but he was like, man, the way the lines kind of move than they have in years prior, it's crazy because you get like these picks that come out, and then it seems like the steam, it's just like a snowball effect. Like, it almost like steams too much in a sense where you're like, wow, this moved 4 or 5 points, or maybe even like three points in like an hour. They're not even just moving it incrementally in a way. I'm just curious, have you picked up on a trend like that? Like, I know it's just a few, like a week into the college football season, but I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah, well, part of that, I think, Ben, has to do with the fact that some of the betting groups, if you will, are more accessible now than they used to be in the past. And obviously, if you've got, all these, if everyone's going to set up and bet at the same time, right? It's going to move something. Maybe, I talked about this a lot during college basketball season. I thought some of these moves were just kind of like, they were just moving because a bunch of people were betting the same thing at the same time. Maybe not so much, a move that maybe not something that warranted a move that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's definitely going to be some value in fading though. Like, I think you would probably, so just as it pertains to the big line moves, I think you will do better opposing them at the sort of peak price on the other side than you will do trying to chase those plays at bad numbers.
I think I agree.
Yeah.
Stanford, Hawaii. Maybe that's what you're about to bring up.
That's one. I hope we're not on the wrong side of one today, because I know you have Colorado State at, we both have it at good numbers, and that, but I mean, it's a really good sort of, like, that's like case in point right there, right? Like, should they have been bet down to 9.5? I mean, if you bet that over the summer, you got 16. Even if you bet it like a month ago, like I did, you got 14. And so now are you, I mean,
yeah, like, what do you do now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe for once getting a good number will matter. Who knows?
I hope so. I hope so. That would be really nice, because that's that's the whole idea with CLV. So
Yeah.
we'll see. So let's hop on into the first game, and we're gonna have clips for all these. So I'm gonna roll it.
That's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying.
Snap. Good hold. And the kick is blocked. Appalachian State has stunned the college football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports history.
Alrighty. So any given Saturday, we're talking about a game with a pretty big spread. And we have to talk about this one. I've probably talked to more people about a week 1 game, or I haven't ever talked to more people about a week 1 game than this game, man. It's so funny because a year ago, like, us Colorado fans were looking at the season and there wasn't much hope. And now with Dion, it's like, is he the savior? Right. There's a lot of moving parts with this game. I'm showing a spread currently, I think, of 21, it's creeped back up in a few spots, so maybe some late steam action, getting back up to that key number of 21. Total 64. Let's just start with Dion and what he can do in this first game. What are your thoughts there?
So this is such an intriguing game. I have no bet in this game. I'll just put it out there. Like this is one I have probably like the least of the actionable opinions of any game we're going to talk about today. But it's interesting to respect. So I want to point out that Colorado is not the square dog that I thought they would be in this game, like 4 weeks ago, or well, way more than 4 weeks ago. I said like maybe months ago when Dion, was coming in and I knew this game was on the schedule. I was like, oh my God, everyone's going to be on Colorado. They are going to be the squarest dog of week one. And that is certainly not the case. I don't know if it's because there was, some adversity for Colorado over the summer with some guys leaving and whatnot. But Colorado's out there right now. And they're coming into this far different than I expected them to be. I actually think more the masses think that TCU is going to blow them out. Like that wasn't how I saw this game like weeks ago. I was like, okay, everyone's going to think Colorado has a chance to pull the upset. And I'm actually just based on the tickets and the money percentages, it looks like there's more of the masses are willing to lay the 3 touchdowns with TCU, which I mean, it makes sense, right? Like TCU made it to the final last year, which I didn't expect, certainly didn't expect. And I probably
not a lot of people did.
Right. And even when a lot of people thought it was a possibility, I didn't. And I lost a lot of money fading them and then made it all back on Georgia in the final. But that's, it's another story. But like, this is TCU is another team that they can't possibly be as good as last year. I mean, it would be outrageous to think that they could replicate what they did last year, in my opinion, even though like Chandler Morris, I mean, he was supposed to be the starting quarterback last year. Of course, he gets hurt in that Colorado game. He'll get his 3rd chance at being the starter, right? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, maybe he takes the Bulls by the horns this year. They have a really good backup though. TCU, I think they bring in Chance Nolan, maybe from Oregon State. So they have a lot of, I have no problem with TCU really like being a 3 touchdown favorite here. I think if I was absolutely forced to play it, just based on what I'm seeing on the odd screen, I'd have to lean toward the points because if Colorado is even a little bit organized, they theoretically could hang around in this game, I think. But that's my concern is having to go on the road, no tune-up, right? First game of the season, they got to go play a true road game at TCU. My buddy Gerald tweeted at me. Shout out to Gerald if he's watching this. He lives down in Fort Worth. And he said, I wonder if Colorado has trouble with the fact that it's going to be like 105 on the field today. Maybe it's certainly something worth noting. Colorado always has such an advantage playing at home that we forget when they go on the road. It should be almost looked at as a disadvantage in a lot of cases. Comes up all the time in basketball season, right? Like they play their splits home road are so different. So. God, I'm interested to see what you have to say here, Ben, because I would be forcing a play in this one. I think it's tough. I think maybe the points, but nothing strong here for me.
Yeah, so I want to address the weather and the heat because I think that's a great point. And, I'm under the impression that with the heat, I think TCU is going to be more acclimated to it. But at the same time, the way Colorado has been training, they've definitely stepped up their endurance and performance and things of that nature. And also Boulder's been super hot. I think it's been the hottest summer, like where they've been practicing and such. And with the altitude, you have to wonder, is that enough to like give you comparable, environmental effects? But it's still different. When you have 100+ degree heat pounding on you, unless you're practicing in that day after day, you can't really replicate it. I think where it could cause some issues for the Buffs is with their depth, right? If they do have some guys who are having trouble with playing in the heat and then they have to start playing. And maybe that's where it comes into play. But I think other than that, I feel okay in that first game. Now, with the first game, TCU, I feel like might be on their toes a little bit on defense because they haven't really seen this offense yet. I mean, no one really has. I don't really know what to expect myself. New O coordinator, new quarterback. I mean, it's basically a brand new team. So part of me at this point in time thinks like a Buffs first half might not be the worst look at plus 11.5, just coming from the angle of, hey, maybe TCU doesn't really know what to expect in that first half. And then at halftime, maybe they make some adjustments. So at this point in time, I would probably play Buffs plus 11.5 is kind of my best bet in this one.
Yeah, I would have a hard time arguing with it. Like this is like one of the games today where, you could have just made a case for TCU and I'd be like, okay, and you made a case for Colorado. I'm like, yeah, I could see that too. Tough game for me to find an angle in here.
Yeah. And Heisenberg makes a interesting point. Travis Hunter, yeah, he's playing both sides of the ball, which you never really see anymore in college football. I mean, you'll see that in high school at times. Even in high school, they don't want the studs playing both ways if they have enough depth. So we'll have to see. I mean, he is one of the best athletes in college football, but at the same time, man, you only can handle so much against a really good team playing in the heat. So yeah, that is a really good point and something to watch for. But I think everyone is going to be tuning into this. I know people at first were jokingly like, "Oh, why does Colorado and TCU get like a premier?" But like your early noon kickoff or whatever. And I'm like, because everyone's going to be tuning in. Love him or hate him, like Dion, he's polarizing. Everyone is going to be watching this one. So I'm looking forward to it. And I know a bunch of people at the game too as well. So gonna be a fun one. Alrighty, let's transition into the next game. Here we go.
Daddy's gone. I'll tell you who his daddy is, because if he keeps messing up, the tribal chief is going to be his daddy.
All righty, who's your daddy? So we're talking about a team that has owned another team, and we have to talk about Ohio State and Indiana because Ohio State has simply dominated the Hoosiers, winning 27 straight, which is pretty crazy. You don't really see that too often in modern day college football. At least some teams that have owned teams, you get an upset once in a while, but that hasn't been the case with these two teams. So this spread was, I believe it was let me get back to full game. I think it was 28 minus 28, and then it's moved up. I think like 2 weeks ago, I saw it move a little bit. Ohio State 30.5-point favorites with a total of 59. Adam, what are your thoughts with this one?
Yeah, so fortunately, as soon as I saw we were leading off of Colorado TCU, I'm like, I'm going to come on here. First game we're going to talk about, I'm going to just give like a lame handicap. And, but I do have opinions about everything else we're going to talk about, at least the ones that, I know we're going to talk about. So I didn't bet this. This wasn't like one of my like best bets for the day, but also I'm a little bit more lower volume. Like if I was going to expand out my card, like this would probably make it. I lean toward Indiana plus the points here. Now, obviously, Ohio State's owned the matchup, but in this game, we're not really talking about a win. I mean, if Indiana wins this game, wow. Okay. Like that's great.
Right.
Like we're not really talking, once you get into these spreads that are 30 or more, it's less picking a winner and loser and more just trying to figure out if Indiana can hang within the number. I'm going to be willing to fade Ohio State this year. I think Ohio State, they're getting billed. They lose CJ Stroud, but they're still getting billed as if they're like the top offense in the league, in like the FBS, or at least one of them, certainly the Big Ten. Kyle McCord will be their quarterback, and he's got so many weapons there that he should succeed. They have an elite sort of group of talent, in my opinion, elite running backs, phenomenal receivers. But they had quite a bit of turnover on the offensive line. And so for me, if you watch my breakdown, I always say like the teams I like to back are the teams that are strong in the trenches, good offensive line, good defensive line. I'll take that so much more over like great receivers and skill players and whatever. If you don't have an absolute stud offensive line, in my opinion, you can't be the top offensive team or even one of the top 2 or 3 offensive teams in the country. So that would be that leads me to want to play against Ohio State, because Ohio State is already getting priced as if they're the top option or one of the top options in college football. And I think that's what's happening here. And then you throw in the mix, Ben, of the masses betting this up and betting Ohio State. And this is one of those ones where, probably really good value now coming in on the other side. I mean, the fact that this has gone past 30, I was looking for it on my screen, and I think it's, what is it? Are we at 30.5 right now?
Yeah, I'm showing.
Is that what we're at?
Circa has a 30, but then I'm showing even a 31 at Caesars, which I don't want to say it's a key number 31, but I'd rather, seeing a 31, there's ways that hits versus a 30. So plus 31.
This one's interesting because there's a 31 at Caesars, and then there's still some spots that are at like 29.5, which is like something that you see less and less of these days, because everyone's got an app, and every time there's someone out there that sees a number that isn't the same as a different number, and they all bet it to the same place anyway. So it's like you don't see many scenarios where you've got these like big 29.5 one place, and then 31 someplace else, like a 2-point move. But like I like Indiana here against the current number. 31, 30, 30.5, 31. Indiana seems like the right bet, because I think you're getting a little bit of line value. And the other thing is like going to be interesting to see how they play this. I mean, Indiana probably knows they're going to lose this game. And this is the first game of the year. I think Indiana is going to be like, if they're going to have any offensive success this year, I think it's going to come via running the ball and leaning on their offensive line, which I do think is pretty good. All things considered. I mean, you're talking an Indiana team that many think are going to be, a bad Big Ten team. Still a pretty good offensive line, and they should be able to run it a little bit. So if they do choose to like go the route of like running the ball and not, almost like accepting defeat here, they could definitely do it within that number, I think. And that's like sort of like the key with a lot of these like big type, spreads, these teams that are 20-point dogs and stuff like that. Are they going to be like, okay, like playing their game? Or is it going to go off the rails and suddenly they're throwing the ball all over the place, pick six, turning over, and now they're down 40?
Or they go for it like in their own territory, right? Like that's one thing that, oh man, losing a game like this or a big spread, I hate when that happens, right? You just like basically give them at least 3 points or a touchdown. So that's something, you're right, you have to worry about too.
So Scrunch Wins in the chat says he's thinking 17.5 first half. I kind of agree with that. Like Indiana is going to try to slow this game down, in my opinion. They're going to try to run it, try to get some first downs, keep their offense on the field, and play field position. So I don't hate that. And again, I think if I had a bet on this game, it would absolutely be Indiana plus the points. I think they're good enough to not lose by 6 scores or 5 scores, right? Like they may take that. And something Ohio State did last year that I want to point out. They're the opposite of a bend but don't break defense. Like when they do, so they'll make great plays, turn the ball over. They've got a bunch of good athletes, but when they bend, they almost always break. They gave up a lot of touchdowns last year, especially like when teams would get in the red zone.
Yeah.
And when you're talking a 30-point spread, you let Indiana in the end zone a couple times, going to be hard to cover 30, in my opinion. So I like the Hoosiers here.
Tom Allen is a high school coach. Was he actually a high school coach? Because sometimes that could mean but two things. The interesting wrinkle with this game is Ohio State basically has come out and they said they're going to play 2 quarterbacks. So they're going to start, I believe, Kyle McCord, and then Devin Brown will also get some time. Reminds me a lot of Michigan last season, where they had McCartney and McNamara kind of playing like, hey, you get first half, you get second half. Sometimes that worries me a little bit with backing a big underdog in this spot, because if they do have Devin Brown out there, like, do they still want to see him get as many plays as possible? Like, do they still try to play up tempo? I wonder if that contributed to maybe some of this line move, but this is information I feel like we've known for a while. Like, it's not like it just came out that they said that they're starting 2 quarterbacks. So I don't know what that means to the spread. It also could be a good thing for Indiana, maybe if one of the quarterbacks comes in late, Devin Brown, and just doesn't look good, right? It's hard to just come into a game as a quarterback and have success like halfway through. So I guess I'm just kind of making an argument for both sides with that point. I'm curious what the chat thinks about that, like how that kind of affects the spread. Do you have any opinion on like a 2 quarterback system, or does it just kind of depend who the quarterbacks are talent wise?
Yeah, it depends on who. I don't hate the 2 quarterback thing always week 1 because I still think that there's a lot of these teams that don't truly like know who's going to end up being like the guy like going forward. So I think, and this is what I was kind of talking about earlier in the week as it pertained to Utah, right? Like if they just had a guy like let's say Rising got ruled out and this is like week 6 and now you've got like a couple different quarterbacks. I would have been so much more concerned about like backing Utah in that game. But the reality is all of these guys are preparing all summer to play in this game, right? So
Facts,
it's like even the second quarterback, stuff like that, they've all spent their whole summer preparing for this game. So the thought that either one wouldn't sort of be ready to be in that spot or would be less ready than the other is kind of like, week 1, I just sort of throw that out. Indiana's probably going to play 2 quarterbacks here as well. And it's like, I don't think that it's tough to like relate that back to the number at all because there's not enough separating the 1 from 2 on either side, in my opinion, to be like, oh, well, this is going to have a huge impact against the number or the flow of the game. This situation.
Good point. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, again, both these guys were fighting and are fighting, so they've been preparing, hopefully, to be the starter. So, thoughts on Tavian Jackson? I don't have a lot of thoughts on Tavian Jackson. Do you?
I just know he's TJD's brother. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think he's Trace Jackson Davis's younger brother. Which is cool. But yeah, that's that's about all I've got there. I don't know. Again, I think Indiana is gonna be, they're gonna have to lean on their offensive line, try to run the ball a little bit. And that's the way they would hang in this game.
This is kind of a side note, but I've heard people close to the program, like have been in message boards and then just hearing people talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. I've heard people say that he could be the best wide receiving prospect ever, which is crazy to think about. Think about all the crazy good wide receivers that have come out of college, but that's what some are saying. I don't know what that really means for this game because we know he's a stud, but I saw there was something on, it might have been DraftKings or FanDuel, that it said Marvin Harrison Jr. to be like the first pick. And it's so rare for a wide receiver to go number 1, but I'm trying to think like and we're talking a little NFL now. I'm trying to think if there is a team that already has like a young quarterback, would they take Harrison in that first spot or would they trade? Right. Just a thought. I'm curious what the chat thinks. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like if, let's say Harrison has like an insane year and just, has one of the best years as a wide receiver and he checks all the boxes, do you think he could go number 1?
Would probably depend on what that team would need. The problem is like the teams that typically get to draft 1 have so many like more needs that they like, it's tough to take like a wide receiver. That's the only thing. I feel like at this point where we're at in NFL football, these teams are going more toward like you go get your receivers and your running backs when your team is already somewhat complete, because it's just they're so fragile at this point. And I feel like there's it's like almost like next guy up at those positions sometimes where it's tough to, you see the way running backs are being treated now in the NFL, right? It's like can't even get paid anymore if you're a running back.
A wide receiver could be next.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So I'm not saying that would be the wrong move. It's just, it's hard to see a team thinking like that, because typically when they're in the 1 spot, it's like you probably need a quarterback. I suppose.
What about the Texans?
Well, that's the thing. That would be the perfect example. Team like the Texans, who had 2 first rounders and went defense and quarterback. Now, I don't think they're going to be that bad this year, but if they tanked and were in the 1 spot, well, that makes sense. But I'd be shocked if they're drafting one. He could end up on a team like that and go in like the top, couple, of course, but one overall would be interesting to see.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can
that would have to be the scenario, right? Texans and they don't trade, but then they would get so much heat for not trading, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
But hey, Stroud and Harrison Jr. That would be kind of cool. Also, Heisenberg said that Right Angle Sports gave out the under in the USC Nevada game. We'll have to see where that ends up.
See, this is like exactly the point I was trying to make. That used to now.
Oh wow,
they give
it was
out
68, 67,
right.
68,
so,
and it dropped.
So they give it out, and already someone in our chat here is all over it, and it's like. I remember trying to get Raz's info 10 years, what's it, 20, let's say it's 7 or 8 years ago. And it was really tough to get. It was, it was hard to come by.
You had to know someone who knew.
You had to know someone to get it. And it was hard to sort of get. Yeah. And now it's just like so accessible that these moves occur. And suddenly, at some point, everyone, like every team, every total has a number. At some point, there's probably going to be some value on the other side. Now, whether it's value you would want to bet, like I always have to say, like, okay, do I want to fade them here? Right.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be a conversation you have with yourself. But and when they start playing more and more games, it's like they can't have a 5-point edge on 10 different bets. So there's got to be
that's pretty
areas
tough.
where, it makes sense to come.
Here's my opinion with some of these moves, and I just want to preface this by I don't think Right Angle is like trying to bet down a number to get a better number, like and bet the other way.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, people have said that. I don't think they're trying to do that. But what I will say, let's say hypothetically, Right Angle Sports gave out USC Nevada over. It's gonna move 4 points up, right?
Exactly.
And the idea is like efficient market theory. Like I'm sure you've like heard that term. The idea is like, oh, well, if they were to bet it over, under, and like someone else hits the other side, it's going to like come back to its true state. But what I've seen though is like now that the books have so much information, like they almost see Right Angle on these sides, and then maybe another sharp guy comes in. I almost feel like they don't value like that as much, like to say like, oh, someone's on the other side, and then they put it back to its original number. It's almost like, oh, maybe they're just buying back a low number, and then they just kind of like they kind of let it chill. And I saw that for college basketball specifically. Again, it's kind of a hypothetical what I just mentioned, like if they were to bet the over, but it's a good conversation because these line moves they're crazy, man. They really are. All right, let's keep moving. Let me get to the next video clip, and here we go.
Sorry, I had to see what someone was banging on the door. So we're all set. Here we go.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about Utah State, Iowa. It's funny, last season we had this category, and I didn't really think about it, but we ended up having Iowa like almost every game until someone pointed out. I'm like, oh shit, maybe we should diversify a little bit. But hey, here we are with Iowa again. But hey, it makes sense, right? I mean, offensively, last season they were 117th in points per game. Seems like Kirk Ferentz like won't pride aside and not be stubborn, and he's going to continue to play the way he is and slow the clock down, rely on his defense, play a really like power traditional offense. And with the new rules, Adam, it's almost like that's only going to make things worse. Maybe we'll have to see, but I'm showing a total of 43 and then a spread of 23.5, 23, 24, kind of depending on where you look at it. What are your thoughts on Iowa with Cade McNamara, and what do you think about this spread and line here?
So I wanted to bet Utah State here. I really did, and it's just here's the thing. McNamara, it looks like he's going to play. It came out early, so let's just rewind to earlier in the week. There were some sharp people that thought no way he's going to play. Okay, the line moves down. And then it started to creep back up. this morning it's coming out that he is going to play. And my whole thing is like, does it really matter if he plays? Like, if he plays, they're obviously going to protect him, right?
Yep.
Iowa has no real reason to put him in harm's way in this game, in my opinion. So if he does play, he's probably not playing the whole game. And so I wanted to make a case for Utah State at 24. I thought that would be the number to sort of jump in with them. But the hard part in this case and in backing Utah State is, regardless of what happens, how are they scoring on Iowa here, right? Like their offense was horrific last year. I don't think it's, I don't know that they've improved all that much. And the Iowa defense is still outstanding. So you go back to last year, Iowa had no offense, but they still managed to, like, this was the type of game where they would still win and win comfortably because their defense turned plays into points. And the offense will do enough. Like, Iowa should be able to pretty much push around the Utah State defensive front here. That Iowa offensive line should be able to just kind of bully them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it was enough. Like, I saw someone in the chat said I like the under. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's a low number. Got bet down. This feels like one of those that it gets there at any number. Like, this feels like one where it's just going to be a very, boring. Iowa has no real incentive to run it up, in my opinion. So if they're kind of controlling clock and Utah State's not doing much offensively, it's hard to see that under not cashing. The lean here for me is Utah State plus 24. And I didn't have enough confidence in Utah State, even though I liked the number of 24. And I don't think McNamara playing, like, now it's being out. So now you saw like the line come back to 24. I think FanDuel just went to 24.5. Again, tempting. But the problem is I just don't know how much McNamara matters for this game, because Utah State's still really going to have a hard time moving the ball. And Iowa is still going to be able to generate offense in other ways, probably by running the ball. And I wouldn't put it past Iowa to score, a defensive score, or maybe two. I mean, they were so good at doing it last year.
They did it.
Used to say they can't do it again.
Like, we would come in with handicaps about that, and like, it's almost crazy to predict like defensive scores, but when they were doing it every other game, I mean, it was certainly a possibility. I think you make a really good point with McNamara, because there's a lot of questions on like how that offense is going to look, and is it going to be exactly the same? Because McNamara, he can make plays on the ground with his feet, but it's not going to be in this game, right?
Someone's watching our show and just took that 24.5 because FanDuel just full
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time it's happened on this show. But what I will say though is, I don't think McNamara and the Iowa offense, if they were to do anything crazy this season, it's not going to be in this game, right? They're not going to show anything in a game where they're 24-point favorites. I do like Brian Anderson a lot as a head coach. He is a guy that's really easy to root for. He's had all sorts of tragedy in his life, and he seems just like a really good dude. But the talent disparity, I mean, it's going to be on full display here. I lean under. I think 43.5 is a decent look. That first half team total under for Utah State, they always look so low. And this first half is going to fly by. Like, it will be first quarter by, like 15 minutes of real time. It's going to almost be end of the first. So I could see this actually hitting. All they need to do is just only allow a field goal. But yeah, I'm going to lean under in this one. Any other thoughts on this game?
I kind of agree with all of that. It literally could be like, so someone in the chat said the thing is Iowa might not put up 24 themselves. Yeah, that's possible. Or Iowa might put up 20, Iowa might put up 31 and still cover this number, right? Like it's literally like that type of game. The problem I have with, getting involved, I mean, this totals down to 43.5. See, this is where it gets tough to bet. Like, even though it looks like a dead under, you're one pick six away from things going off the rails, and suddenly you're sitting there
You're sweating.
And yeah, it's just like it's a college football game. It doesn't take a whole lot to get into the 40s. So but I still think I still feel like it gets there. It feels like a game where Utah State, maybe right, like they might go into the half with 0 points. Like they might be shut out at halftime, and then you just gotta hope. But then as it comes to the total, you gotta hope that Iowa's not sitting there up 30-0, and then they just let one in. Now it's 37. Now it's 30-7, and then suddenly your total gets busted up on nonsense. But that's also it's part of the handicap. That's what happens in games like this. So that's why they're tough to bet. That's why these big spreads can be really difficult to bet. And I think the way you bet these 20 plus to 30 point spreads, you just have to believe in the number. Believe in the number you're getting. Like, it's really tough to handicap, like, okay, well, Utah State's going to do this, this, and this to keep it within 24 or whatever. It's like, no, I believe in this being the good number. And then it's just like, it's let it play out, right? Like it's sports. Crazy shit happens. Like, so that's why I wouldn't be able to come in and take the under now, because it's just too big of a move here, even though that's the way I see it.
Yeah. And also like a big spread like this over the 20s with a low total, it always can make it difficult, right? Because if Utah State scores 14, that's over their expected total points wise, and game probably goes over. So yeah, the margin for like anything fluke to happen, like if Iowa fumbles and then Utah State gets it at like the 20 and scores, like you're not going to be feeling good about this under. So definitely something to consider. All right, before we hop into the next category, I want to give a shout out to Sport Trade. Sport Trade just entered Colorado. That's my home state. Pumped about that. Adam, I don't know if you've checked Sport Trade out. I know you're in Vegas, but man, it is an awesome app. Dope interface. Some of the best lines too that you'll find. Very low hold percentage. They're doing great things. I'm pumped for them to continuing to expand. And if you use our promo code CW, Colorado and New Jersey right now, but they're expanding. So check them out.
I'll have to check it out. I'm actually in New York. I was in Vegas a couple weeks ago, but I'm actually in New York, and I'm close enough to New Jersey. Sister lives in New Jersey, so I'll have to give that a look next time.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's definitely revolutionary, and I'm excited for people to kind of play around with it more, because there's a lot more you can do with bets that are already placed versus a traditional app, right? Where the cash out option is usually like 99% of the time a bad bet to cash out. So really cool to see them come to Colorado. So they're going to be sponsoring this next segment, and I will hit that right now. That song's electric, man. They play that at the Broncos games, like entering like the fourth quarter, Denver Broncos, and like everyone gets up and starts like it's pretty wild. So yeah, this is a cash or stash. This segment's gonna be cool, Adam. Like, even though you don't have sport trade, and a lot of people don't in the chat, it's a good way to think about like what you can do with it, and then also frame it to your regular sports book. So we're talking about the West Virginia Penn State game, and the under in this game was at 51. So on Sport Trade, you could have got the under at $55.5 a share, and now it's moved up to 58.5. So hypothetically speaking, if you were to just buy a share like earlier in the week on a Tuesday, you would have already profited close to $4, which is pretty cool. So you could potentially just cash out, and you made a quick $4 on one share. Another way to frame it, Adam, is like if you were $100 unit better, you would be up $5 already. So that's just another way to kind of frame it. This total has dropped down to 47, I believe, but let's see where it's at now. Oh, it's back. Ooh, it's going back up a little bit. Interesting. Okay. So this was based on if it was 47.5. So maybe it's seen some action at 4. I guess it was 49 on Circa. You mentioned to me that you have some family going to this game, correct?
A friend of mine's going. So I'm in central New York. So Penn State's only about 4 hours from us. My fiance's entire family is big Penn State fans. So we'll go every once in a while. And it's but a friend of mine is going to be there for the opener. He went to Penn State. So should be a great atmosphere. Penn State is way better at night. Like I think it's just a much better place to see a game at night as opposed to the day for whatever reason. Like the crowds there at night are just better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like the atmosphere. It's almost like teams like LSU, Penn State, a few others. They almost like set themselves up to have like a greater atmosphere in a night game. Like I don't know if people actually put that into the point spread or if they look at it that way versus some other schools. Like it seems like Alabama, if it's a day game, afternoon, night, it doesn't really matter. It's like pretty much consistent. But like Penn State, like you said, it's almost like they elevate things from a noise perspective on those night games. So this one kicks off at 11:30 local time, correct?
Yeah. So this is a 7:30. So 7:30 p.m. Eastern is this one. But yeah, no, I've been to Penn State games during the day where I just like didn't feel, the crowd was like, it was good. I mean, it's still a college football game. But then again, I've been to like games down in Knoxville that were a noon kickoff, and people have been up and going since 4:30 in the morning. So it's like, you're right. It's not always the same every place. Utah's another good one. I used to go out there when my buddy lived out there. Awesome at night. Day game, whatever. It's but at night that place.
You used to have the altitude though.
Yep. Yeah.
So there's
and just but as it pertains like this game, I think now the total. It's going to probably, I see why they bet it under. Like I see why the move toward the under. And this is another perfect example of like West Virginia. It is in their best interest to try to run the ball.
Yes.
Lean on their offensive line, let Garrett Green kind of make plays with his legs and shorten the game in terms of like how many possessions you're going to give Penn State, which all sort of correlates with the under. The thing is though, we're talking another 21-point spread where if they go down a couple of scores, that might all go out the window. Penn State's another team that like they can turn defense into offense really quickly. I think Penn State has a good chance to make the college football playoff this year. I really think that they're not getting talked about enough. So I would actually, I think if I'm just looking at the talent of both teams, I would lean toward Penn State. But this is definitely a number where if West Virginia comes in and sort of executes their game plan start to finish and doesn't abandon it because they go behind, that they could hang around based on the fact that they've got a decent offensive line and can run the ball a little bit.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this spread, I mean, Penn State getting almost 21 points, 3 touchdowns, it's priced like they're a team that could make a run and win the Big Ten. I mean, that West Virginia, I mean, I know they lost some talent, but they still have some talent returning. I wouldn't say they're a bad team, but 21 points. I mean, that's a decent spread for Penn State here. And James Franklin, I think traditionally has covered these spots well. I don't know if he's checking like the spreads, but it seems like he will continue to try to score, I guess. Like he's not like completely taking the foot off the gas.
It's funny. He is a terrible in-game coach, but he's a good in-game coach in a game like this in the respect that he will like kind of pour it on a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't want him trying to like make decisions during a 2-minute drill, against Ohio State, like something like that. But in a game like this, he's your guy because you're right. I feel like Penn State always gets that extra TD at home and in these type of games where they're way outclassing their opponent.
Yeah, no doubt. So like hypothetically speaking, I feel like if you would have bet the under on Sport Trade and you can just profit, I would honestly, I would cash out at that number just because I get it. If you were betting the under, you think the game's going to go under, and it's only like a 2.5 point margin. But something tells me that there's going to be like a late score in this game, whether it's from Penn State or West Virginia, and it's going to send the game over. But West Virginia, they do have a pretty good running game still. I know they have a few guys who were pretty highly rated. So,
and I mean, just go back to the end of last year when they kind of put Green in there. West Virginia was not bad. They played really well the last month of the season or so. A couple upset wins. So,
yeah.
And
also, West by got asked, is that gambling on CLV? I mean, in one way it is. That's one way to look at it. I mean, and another way to look at it too is you could try to middle, but unlike 2.5 points, it's probably not the best middle opportunity. I mean, maybe the key number there, what is around the 49? Isn't it? Isn't that one of them? No, that would be.
Yeah, 48 and 48's a key number, I suppose. Like a lot of
27,
you see a lot of like totals will get hit at like 48.5. So 48 must be considered. I'm not a great totals better, Ben. I don't. The vast majority of my action is sides. I've never felt like I could truly like quantify totals to the point where I was giving myself like a huge advantage against the books. So 90% of the bets I make are on the side. It's just personal preference. It's what's worked for me over the years.
Yeah, stick to obviously what works. So no, that's interesting. And also it's been kind of a whirlwind right now with all the total stuff or all the rule change stuff, because people are trying to quantify like, what are the new rules mean and all that. And some games, I think it hasn't really made a difference, but for example, it was an FCS game, the Abilene Christian Northern Colorado game. Like they were about to score and the clock ended, and they would have probably ran like 2 more plays in a perfect world before that rule. So it's one example, but there's going to be a handful of games that are affected by it, and games going over versus under, or maybe a late score by another team because there's additional time. But the books will adjust eventually. So, and also this is a question: any bourbon drinkers? I mean, I drink bourbon. I'm not a connoisseur. Are you?
The last time, so I went to a bachelor party for a buddy of mine. It was like the year before the pandemic. So it was like October 2019. So this wasn't that long ago. And I'm not a bourbon drinker, but we went to Lexington for the bachelor party and did the bourbon tour, like went to like Woodford Reserve. I think, I forget what the Buffalo Trace might be one of them. Buffalo something. All I have to say is, so not a bourbon drinker. Tried to drink bourbon that day, was blacked out by about 11:30. So not in my usual rotation, but it was really, what I do, what was the best part of that whole thing? The bourbon balls, which is like a filled with like the bourbon cream. Now those are great. I ended up ordering a couple boxes of those, but they actually make the bourbon it's way easier to drink if you're firing down those chocolates with it. Like it takes like a lot of the
the kind of that after it just kind of like goes. I've heard that too, like you compare it with different things, and then they'll have some like you can have it with caramel. They always have like the pairing stuff, but it was
so cool though. Those places, that part of Kentucky is beautiful. Lexington, like just they're in like kind of the country, like it's really cool. I'd recommend that whole like tour thing. Woodford Reserve is the best one though. If you had to make one stop down there, I would say it's like check that place out. It was the best tour in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like the South, like that's a big thing, because out here in Colorado, it's all about the breweries, and like that's just all people want to do and talk about, craft beers and all that. But no, I think it would be fun to get more into the bourbon stuff. So too bad this next segment isn't sponsored by Buffalo Trace. That would be perfect. Okay, let's hop on into it. This is morning headgear.
These people don't give a fuck.
Yes, I can. Just hold on here. There it comes again.
Go Bulldogs!
Yale Bulldogs.
Oh, wow.
Not so fast, midget. Not so fast.
Midget.
It's obvious I look good to Kuna.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
So you're picking West Virginia. You're going to go with the home team?
I love that segment. That clip gets me every time. And I forgot we added another segment, so it's not on screen here, and then we'll do best bets next. But this is the college game day location game of the day. Now, I believe this game is neutral. Is it in Charlotte?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, it's in Charlotte.
Okay.
It's got to get my.
I had to double check because because
neutral field.
When I was doing research, I made a note of that. I just couldn't remember where it was, but yeah, so neutral field. I wonder what the attendance will be, if it's like a 50-50. Probably hard to say, but probably somewhere around that. I don't see like.
Well, yeah, it's closer. So it's closer to Chapel Hill, but I think your South Carolina fan base is a little bit more rabid. Like they'll probably be, they're going to travel farther. It may be pretty equal. I don't know. I'm more familiar with North Carolina. My sister spent a year and a half at Duke, so like I get like where stuff is in relation to Charlotte. I'm not quite sure how far Columbia is away, but I expect both schools to be well represented.
Yeah, someone in the chat will let us know. But yeah, I mean, South Carolina fans, SEC, they're probably down to travel a little bit for this one. I'm showing North Carolina 2.5 point favorite, depending on where you look to at Circa, and then the total 63.5. So I made a note. I think this is probably the best quarterback matchup of the day.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Say what you want about Rattler, but I mean, with May, of course, he's going to be a top 5 pick. But look, Rattler was a highly touted prospect. I mean, 5-star recruit. I know things didn't go the best at Oklahoma, but he did have some really good signs and glimpses last season. And if we can get that out of him this year, South Carolina might be a team to kind of watch for. I'm not saying they're going to win the SEC, but a team that you shouldn't just gloss over. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, first, Capwise Nick in the chat. Columbia's apparently closer. I got to, I'm from New York. I shouldn't be out here talking about
the South and everything.
Like I have any clue. But yeah, so both pretty close. It's an interesting game here because I think both of these teams profile as teams I might want to play against at some point. Like I think I'm more apt to play against South Carolina right now. Mm-hmm. The reason that so rewind to last year, I played against UNC constantly, and it actually did pay off after, especially like down the stretch. Cashed a bunch of tickets playing against North Carolina last year. Lost a little bit early, but they were so far overvalued, could not get a stop. They were a good team to bet against down, in the second part of the season. Was sort of shocked that Chizik is still there. That was surprising to me because they had one of the worst defenses in the FBS last year. But it also tells me that the staff, they must believe in what they've got there because a lot of those guys are back. So a lot of that defense is returning. So it tells me that their defense has to be better because if internally they thought they were such a mess defensively that it couldn't be fixed or they didn't have potential for improvement, they probably would have got rid of Chizik because he did nothing to sort of prove that he should still be in that position. So I'd be willing to say UNC's defense is a little bit better based on the fact that they just have experience this year and they couldn't be worse than they were last year. Now, my willingness to bet against South Carolina is because I don't think their defense is good at all. They have no. It looks like a defense that could get torched a little bit. And, Drake May, I know Walker is out and there's been something made out of that, but I could see him lighting this team up today. I don't think that South Carolina's defense is going to provide much resistance here. Now, I talked about over earlier in the week on Wager Talk programming. Numbers a little bit high. I think I just like better in this game. I think North Carolina, even if they come out and they're poor defensively, this is a game where I could see May like it not mattering. And I also don't think that the lack of so North Carolina, yes, they do lose a couple of receivers, but I'm more willing to bet on May making whoever is in there at the receiver position that much better. And of course, he can make plays with his legs. And the North Carolina offensive line is pretty solid. So that's the way I look here. I like the Heels. I would be willing to back them. I'd probably just take the money line, not mess with like the 2.5 or whatever it is. If it's back down to 1.5, I think North Carolina's the right side regardless.
Yeah, I'm leaning there with you. This game, out of everything we've covered for a side, has been probably the toughest for me to have something that I'm confident in, even to give out a lean, because I can make a case for both sides here. I will say, though, I actually like the under here. So I was looking at it all week, and then I think Brad Powers had a lean to it too, and that makes me feel a little bit better. But the thing with me on this under is Chip Lindsey is now the offensive coordinator, replacing Phil Longo, and he tends to look to run the ball pretty frequently. At least he did at Troy. And last season, like with UNC, it seems like the idea of like the shootout games, it just didn't work as well. Like they tried to just be so one-sided and then also just air the ball out more times than like control clock and then make things easier on the defense. So I'm leaning with the idea of that he's going to look to kind of slow things down a little bit offensively. I could be wrong, but just based on, the profile of the offensive coordinator and then last year, I'm hoping that that's the case here. I mean, it could turn it into a shootout, and this pick looks terrible, but I actually did play the under 63.5 for a unit. So I'm going to be on that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it hasn't moved. I thought it would.
Yeah.
Down a little.
So I like I said, I probably talked about this game like a week ago, and it's like the closer it gets to game time, I would probably, if I was, again, I don't ever feel super confident with totals. It's just they've never been like the more profitable thing for me, but it's hard to talk you off the under, where the number is, and the fact like Spencer Rattler's been kind of inconsistent. Like, I know he should, in theory, he's been around now for 4 years and he should be pretty good, but the South Carolina offensive line is not great in my opinion. And I don't know that he's the guy. Whereas like on the other side, May, I trust to just make plays regardless. I mean, if Rattler's under pressure, he's not, I don't think he can like light a team up really. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. He makes bad throws and he's a guy who he'll make really good plays, and you'll have those games where you're like, oh my gosh, he looks like a Heisman contender. And then he also will have like 2 interceptions in the red zone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And Brad Powers, he's in my opinion, one of the more well-respected college football bettors. So, I mean, anytime I'm on the same side as him, I do feel a little better. But no, this should be a fun game. I mean, South Carolina, I think it's good for college football when they are competitive. So we'll see what happens. I mean, Rattler, I still think he has a lot to prove. He's still trying to find himself, I think, and prove himself since Oklahoma. Those videos came out at him, and he was pretty cocky coming out of high school. So he didn't really walk the walk and talk the talk. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's get into the last game. The last category, and this will be the best bet segment.
This will be the same thing. McDonald will not even hand it off.
Found a little alley.
He should go down. He wouldn't go down. He should go down.
He's going to the house. Touchdown to Falcons.
Marshawn Lynch.
All righty, victory formation. Adam, we're talking about our best bets for the day in chat. You guys can let us know your best bets too for today. Loaded slate, so I'm curious to see what you guys have. So Adam, I'll let you start.
Yeah, so this is one of the plays I have up at Wager Talks. One of the 3 plays that are going to be my 3 biggest, and the ones I gave to my followers for today. And that is South Alabama. I took the 6.5. I complained about not getting 7, which 3 weeks ago, and I still like this as much. I should have just fired it then. But I decided that 6.5 probably was going to go to 6, and ultimately, then we talk about that betting FOMO, right? Like I pretty much just said, you know what, I'm not going to get many chances to bet South Alabama this year because the bookmakers know they're good with that number. Like when they put 7 out there, I'm like, oh, okay. The odds makers this isn't a secret how good this team is. They've got 18 guys back. I believe nine starters on both sides of the ball, I believe, for South Alabama. A ton of experience. The number one returning production in the entire country. And they were really good last year. So why would they not? I mean, they bring all that production back. In theory, they should be great again this year. Will they be a great long-term bet against the number? Well, that's where it's like, maybe not, because it's like it's somewhat known that they're going to be really good. But this is a team that almost beat UCLA last year. And I think even at 6.5, even though I would have wanted a better number there, I'm still willing to bet it because I think they can win this game. And it's just as much a play against Tulane for me as it is a bet on South Alabama. Which I'm not going to go full fade mode on Tulane. I don't have a huge problem with, they brought Pratt back and they should still be competitive, but I see that little number by their name, Ben, throwing them in the top 25. And I had to say, you know what? I think they may be a little bit overvalued based on that. Of course, maybe the look ahead spot of the entire week 1 will be Tulane playing at home against Ole Miss next week. And we always throw this look ahead spot term around. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. I think when you have a ranked team coming in at home and you're Tulane, and it doesn't happen very often, and a lot of times you end up having you get these big games on the road. Last year, beat Kansas State, won in the road, beat USC in the Rose Bowl. Now, to get Ole Miss at home, especially with it being somewhat of a regional thing down there, that's a look ahead spot, in my opinion. And I don't care that it's the first game. It just does not matter. You can't tell me that Tulane has not been thinking about Ole Miss all summer. I don't know that they've been let's go pound the Jaguars of South Alabama here in the first week. They've been thinking about Ole Miss, and you know what? They should be fully focused on South Alabama because I do think that team is this good. And I think Tulane's going to struggle to replace some of their weapons on offense. They lose some key guys on offense, lose their top 5 tacklers on defense. So, in my opinion, if Tulane is fortunate enough to win here, it's going to be a battle. And, if it's a good game and it's a battle, I'd like to think it could be a 1-score game. So that's why I was willing to jump in. Even at the 6.5, I think South Bama can win. If they don't, I'm hoping they keep it within the number. And I'll hope that at least the back door is open on a Tulane defense that I think could be a little bit pedestrian as relative to what they were last year. So South Alabama plus 6.5 is my best bet.
I like it. And there's something that I think a lot of bettors kind of run into, and you alluded to it with, 7, 6.5, and the idea of maybe the FOMO of I didn't get the best number or whatever, and then you won't touch, the 6.5. But what I will say to that is, a lot of times with 6.5 to 7, 2.5 to 3, I guess you could say 9.5 to 10, it's almost like if you're on the quote unquote the wrong side of the hook or whatever, looking at the game. So in this situation, you could say that you are. I still think that there's value. And I know that Chris Andrews at South Point talked about this with the 2.5, 3. And he said, sometimes, or it was 3.5. And he said, sometimes, you see a 3.5, let's say minus 3.5, and you'll look at it and be like, oh, I don't want to touch it because it's not 3. Right. There's a point of resistance though. And it's almost like the 3.5, you could maybe find more value. And he almost said that based on their numbers, they see the minus 3.5 spreads hit more often than a 2.5.
Yeah. And Ben, I just want to say one thing, because I think this is so important for the recreational bettor that just wants to get better and be a little bit just take a step forward from recreational to doing this to really try to make some money. You hear a lot of people on Twitter, and it's well, you got to get the best number. You have to get the best number. That is not everyone is Brad Powers, and not everyone is going to bang 15 games in June and get all sorts of CLV. it's okay to not get the best number. You just don't want to take a bad number. I think that's lost in translation sometimes.
That's a good point.
You do not need to get the absolute best number on every bet. If you can, that's awesome. And it's going to make you better long-term. But if Colorado State's such a good example. Like I texted you a month ago and I was like, man, I would have loved to get 15.5 here, but I still think 14 is a pretty good number. I still think I'm going to get some value there. And that's now down to 10 or 9.5. So it's like, I still have a very playable number. And even if you came in and took 13.5, you're like, man, I missed 14. That sucks. Yeah, I think you'd be pretty happy with 13.5 right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Considering it's down to 10. So, you just, I think that and someone in our chat says, what's your thoughts on Western Kentucky minus 13? Well, that's a scenario where it's like, now like for me, if you like Western Kentucky, by all means, go for it. But if you missed like 14, 13.5, whatever with South Florida, and then it goes to 11, then I might say, okay, maybe pump the brakes a little bit. You missed too many key things. But if South Florida was 14 and you're like, and you got it at 13, not the end of the world. And I don't think you should be like just taking, just totally like disregarding bets because you didn't get that absolute best number. You just want to make sure that's a perfect example that you didn't take 11 with South Florida when you could have had 14 or 13.5.
Yeah. And it's, I strive to hit, the best number on every bet, but it doesn't happen all the time. And yeah, I think it's a fair point. Like you can strive to get there, but it's not always going to happen, right? Like you're going to run into those scenarios where you don't get the absolute best number, but it's okay if you feel like, at that point in time, there's good value available. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing up that point. And it's something to just kind of keep in mind as we go through the college football season. So for my best bet, I think I am going to go with a total here. I mean, Colorado State is up there, but I don't think it can be my best bet just because it's moved so much. If it was like sitting at a 14, I would feel a lot better about it. And I probably would actually say that it was my best bet. I'm going to go with Wyoming, Texas Tech, and I'm going to go with the under 50.5. And that's what it's at right now. I know that there's a few sharp people on this under. I was on this pretty early. I actually have this at like 54.5, but I still like the value at 50.5. I think the big thing for me is Wyoming is going to play super slow. And like Craig Bull is literally salivating at these new rules. It's going to align well with his kind of a coaching philosophy. Like he loves to slow down the clock and he's going to do that even more so. Like this is a game, Adam. I feel like you'll like go to the bathroom and like you miss like 5 minutes of the game. Like there's going to be like no stoppage. It's just going to fly, and that bodes well for an under. And I think it bodes well for Wyoming too. I don't know if they can win this outright because they do have a talent disparity, and Texas Tech's offense, I think, will be fine. But, teams coming into Laramie, they haven't played well. They haven't covered well. And I think that correlates well with this under 50.5. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this game.
So this one was one that my only real thought, I guess it kind of does correlate, was I would have leaned toward taking the points here. And so typically when you're going to, if you, in most cases, if you have a total of, what do we say the total is right now?
50.5.
50.5. That's right. I found it. You got a total of 50.5. It's a lot of times the under and the double digit favorite is a similar handicap in most cases. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for me, being as though I lean toward Wyoming here, it would be hard for me to disagree with the under, because I do think that I think it's probably going to need to stay under for them to cash against the 14. So would endorse this one for you.
Yeah. I don't see Wyoming scoring over 20. So,
right.
Yeah. The kind of would make sense there. So, not much more to say about that one. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's one of those that almost seems too good to be true, but it has moved a little bit. I think we're getting into that territory. Like if it goes under 50, I would, maybe think twice about playing a full unit. 49, maybe a half unit. I don't know if it's going to go any lower, but just keep that in mind. Because because we will see those late moves. So let's just run through a few in the chat. Like we can do these rapid fire at them because got 9 minutes to watch the Buffs shock the world. No.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Buffalo, Wisconsin. I don't really have too much with this one. Oh, I guess the new O coordinator for Wisconsin, I think came from North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yep.
Yeah, I don't really
He's
know
from North
if that
Carolina.
means, I don't know if that means anything here, but it's probably going to be a very similar offense that Wisconsin has run in the past. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I saw some respected money on both the on Wisconsin, but that was a while ago, right? So it's like I think it got hit all the way up to maybe 25. Now at 28, I would say look for an in-game opportunity. Like don't come out firing Wisconsin minus 28 when that this is what I'm talking about, right? Like that would be the definition of taking a very bad number. However, that's why in-play betting is great. Let's say they go 3 and out or have to punt on their first drive, or like Buffalo gets a quick score or field goal, then jump in and try to grab Wisconsin at minus 24, minus 24 and a half, minus 25, which were playable numbers for Wisconsin. I did see some counter over. It looks like this was bet down a little bit and then started to come back. Maybe I think maybe what is it, 53 and a half now, open like 55. So it would probably lead me to and this is another one I love looking. I love this. Like this never happens. The public under is always a good fade. And this seems to be that for whatever reason, at least based on my screen here. It looks like there's far more activity on the under from like a ticket count perspective. And so I'm not quite sure why. So I think I would lean toward the over here if I had to bet a total in this one.
You know, it's funny. It's almost like this year, like in the first week, the unders are way more mainstream and popular because of the new rules, where it's almost like a default, like it's getting so mainstream. Maybe I'm thinking too highly of the public, but it just seems like the average, maybe a little bit more of an average Joe. They're like, oh, unders.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
you're not wrong about that. I'm seeing way more under activity. Like there's always going to be those games, right? Like the Iowa game, right? That's a pretty that's one that like everyone's going to gravitate toward the under.
Yeah,
but there is a quite a bit of under action. I mean, like just across the board. Like usually, like the ticket splits are almost always tilted toward the over, especially in college football. Like people love to just come out and fire overs and like want to root for scoring and stuff like that. You're right. Like I'm seeing far more under money in the market here. So maybe you look to oppose some of that, because I don't know that these new rules just mean that there's just going to be no scoring.
Yeah.
Like it's
like if you had access to it, I mean, over 54 and a half at plus 106 on Sport Trade, and it's not bad, right? Seeing some plus money on a yeah. Because look, Buffalo has a lot of guys coming back, and I think people just expect like Wisconsin just to drain the clock out. But if they just score at will, even if they're running slow and Buffalo can't stop the offensive line and they just get manhandled in the line of scrimmage, like this could be one of those games where it's like 45 to 10, because the implied total is going to be somewhere around like 13 to 42, 41 ish. So, Wisconsin will have to put up points, and I know 40 and a half seems like a lot of points, or 41, whatever it is for Wisconsin, but I think they could get there just because they just have so much more size at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Saw some sharp money on the over in the Akron game, which hasn't really moved all that much. So that might be one where I think like you could piggyback the sharp move there, because it didn't move out of the range of like being able to play it. I think you're still seeing like 55 and a half and stuff like that. So that would be one where I would say like, yeah, like that's a scenario where I don't think you're taking like a bad number, like being like off on like a point or something. I think you could play that.
You kind of were talking about this one, but Western Kentucky, their offense is going to be really good this year. But in this spot, I mean, it's a high total, 69, 70. I know you're not a totals guy, but anything there, because I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this.
Interesting game. It's coming. Like I thought about South Florida. They made my sort of long list. Kind of gave it up because I wasn't getting the right number, but this is coming back. So now it's back to 13.
Yeah, it is going.
Do I want to fade that game day move? I don't know. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like it's coming back on game day. Typically you have to wonder like, okay, limits maybe going up. Like that's, might not be something I want to bet into. I lean South Florida there, but kind of gave it up because I missed the number. Now that it's coming back, it would sort of make sense that like South Florida would be the side I would want to be on there. And it is still the way I would bet it. I would look to play against Western Kentucky here, but again, it's an interesting move. I didn't know that we would see because it's not like the betting public is just all over Western Kentucky.
No,
so
not at all.
I didn't. That'll be one I'll have to dig into a little bit more.
I might hop in.
Florida, but
I might hop in on a 12.5.
Yeah,
but we'll see. I don't know. That would be my lean like at this point in time. But I honestly didn't dive into that from a handicap perspective, so I'll keep my mind open with that one. Tennessee 28. I'll just say this real quick, Adam. Like, Heupel likes to cover. Like I swear he knows the spread, or it's either that or he doesn't take the foot off the gas. Like he doesn't care if they're up. Like he will play the same way almost like in the first quarter as like the fourth quarter. So that's my
good buddy. There. Good buddy of mine is a Virginia season ticket holder and a huge Virginia fan.
Yeah.
And not much optimism down there. He texted me earlier this morning. He said they probably get smashed by 4 or 5 scores. So
yeah,
I'm not sure that I'd be looking to grind out the plus 28 right there. You're probably good with. You can find us 27.5. You might
maybe it's moved a little bit. It was 28 and came back down. So that could be telling. Let's see here. Boston College, NIU. I didn't really look at that one. I think some sharp people were on NIU, but
definitely. They're I actually kind of like both of these teams this year, but I'm not a huge, I'm not trying to rush to the window to lay a bunch of points with BC, which is, I think Boston College will improve over the long run, and they'll probably be a live dog in a couple of scenarios. Will they win here? I mean, they should, but I also don't disagree with the Northern Illinois money. That's a team that I think could be better than their market outlook coming into this season. So I would lean with the dog, but at the current number, I don't have any interest in getting involved.
I don't know why that's not popping up. That's weird. Starts at 10, maybe.
It may have. I mean, it
may have already started.
They may have pulled it. We are 1 minute
might be
from kickoff here, so
might be live. I'm gonna go real quick through the last few of these. I like the over in this UTSA Houston spot. I think it was at. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I think it was at 59.5. Let me pull it up. I think I actually played that at 59.5. Oh, it's up to 60. It's about time. I'm like, it just felt weird not being over 60. But it's not like a super strong play for me, but I like that over. Do you have anything on the side?
I know UTSA Houston. I know CT Betts likes Houston for what it's worth. If you don't know who CT Betts is, it's Chris Thurston. He's one of our co-hosts on The Hustle, and
he's pretty sharp, man.
He is very sharp. He's a great football bettor. One of the best I know personally. And the Hustle should be up from Wednesday. He did a pretty good breakdown on that Houston game. So and they're wearing those sick Oilers jerseys for what.
Dude, those are nice. It's they can just search Hustle Pod, right?
Yeah, Hustle Pod. I've retweeted it a couple times. But yeah, if you put the Hustle Wager talking to YouTube, it's the first thing that comes up. And I know he likes Houston today, so I typically don't bet against him. He knows what he's doing. So
yeah, and let's just do one more. What was the redemption game? Let me see here. Chat can redeem points. The Air Force game I didn't look at though, just because these spreads are coming out so late, man. These FCS games, so it's
crazy. What was it for? I mean, Thursday nights it was like 3 hours before the game they were putting them up. So yeah, I usually look to try to find some value there, and I kind of just didn't because what was it? It was going to be tough to handicap a bunch of them before the game, and it's like, I don't know. I don't do a ton personally with FCS, so I kind of just ignored him because not giving us much time to sort of figure it out.
Alabama first quarter, minus 9.5. I mean, it looks like it should hit, but you just have to think about the new clock rules. Like if Alabama gets 2 possessions, it almost feels like they're going to score on both of those. But if Middle Tennessee somehow scores, or if there is a 3 or just like a weird possession for Alabama where they don't score, who knows? And maybe he was talking about a team total, or maybe I don't know what he's alluding to. Oh, over under 12.5. I don't. Do you do derivatives much, like for anything?
I don't. It's not a bad way to. I mean, I'm more of an old school, better side. Like the stuff we bet 10 years ago before it was like there was all these offerings and stuff like that. Listen, you can make great money if if you can get down on it. Like props, team total, stuff like that are awesome ways to bet. I've just never had I've never trusted my ability to quantify a team total the way I can a spread. So I'm probably not your guy for that. You want just sides. That's where I'm still betting like it's 2010, Ben. Like that's
No, that's respectable. And also I'm staying away from these derivatives at first for this season. Like I typically will bet maybe like out of 20 bets, like one time will be a one-off, but I just don't know with these new rules. Like I'm just kind of playing it out and seeing how things go. So anyways, we're going to call it. Adam, where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter. You see my handle right there at TopFlightSI, and you can find all my stuff at Wager Talk. That's wagertalk.com. A lot of free stuff on Twitter, and we do shows just about every day. So give me a follow on Twitter, and my DMs are always open, Ben. I answer them all day long.
Nice.
So you got a question, just hit me up.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop the Twitter. Yeah, and I've been looking at all those videos on Wager Talk, while I'm feeding my baby at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So I've been watching them. Really good stuff there. Yeah, appreciate it, man. Best of luck today.
All right. Yeah, let's go watch some football, right?
It. Yeah, hell yeah. All right, guys, appreciate it. We'll be back on stream next week, and best of luck today for tailing our plays. See ya.